Entrepreneurs have been called many things, but I'd like to say that entrepreneurs are really like magicians because they create value out of virtually nothing but an idea, some ambition, willingness to take risk, and the willingness to work around the clock. So if those are the ingredients, and they're all pretty ephemeral, they're all pretty soft, and in the end you can create extraordinary value for customers, for employees, and for all your shareholders, then you've certainly been a magician in terms of creating value. I think entrepreneurs have a burning passion to create something that is different from what's been done before, and to walk a different kind of journey than other people walk. And I have been really very privileged to have had an exciting and an extraordinary life, all because I've been an entrepreneur. I haven't actually ever worked for anyone else. After I got my degree at IIT Bombay and then went to the US and got my degrees at Carnegie Mellon University, I started my first company. I've been building companies for the last 45 years. No company has been less than 5 years, and most of them have been 8, 10, 15-year journeys. I've built a total of 42 companies so far, and fortunately, 41 of the 42 have been very successful. And that statistic is important for only one reason: it gives me more money in my foundation to give away. If 80% of them had failed, I'd probably not have very much to give, but thankfully the opposite is the case. So the journey actually began in a very unexpected place because I do not come from an entrepreneurial family or a business family. There was no one else in the family who provided a role model of entrepreneurship. So my entrepreneurial journey actually began at IIT Bombay, and why that's interesting is because technically it makes me a student entrepreneur. So my entrepreneurial journey began as a student entrepreneur at Hostel 2 at IIT Bombay, and I would walk from Hostel 2 to the electrical engineering department, which was about a 1-mile walk, and come back at 4 o'clock after classes. There was, long day, poor lunch. Everyone who came back was hungry, and dinner was not served till about 7:30 in the evening, and it was a lousy dinner to begin with. So there seemed to be a need for a canteen that would serve soft drinks and snacks. No such canteen existed. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was, but I did know what a canteen was. And so 10 friends, 9 other friends and I got together. We chipped in 10 rupees each, share capital of 100 rupees. It's a lot of money in those days for me. It's, what is it now, 10 cents? And we started the canteen. Turned out to be hugely successful. We delivered about 10,000% dividends in the first year. And in hindsight, that was a terrible, terrible mistake. Now you would ask why? What could be wrong with giving large dividends? For those of you whose memories go back that far, we're talking about 1969, 1970. India was a deeply socialist country, and the large dividends that we were delivering became a matter of the political agenda in the student elections in Hostel 2. And the person who was running for secretary of Hostel 2 ran on a single agenda, which was to nationalize the canteen corporation of Hostel 2. This was the agenda. Apparently, socialism won the day. The guy won the election. That was the good news for him, momentarily. The bad news was, 1 year later, the canteen went bankrupt, shut down. Perfect example of what was happening in the socialist economy in India at the time. And the guy did not get re-elected. And by the time the next person got elected, who again won on the platform that he would reintroduce the canteen, was then unable to actually start up the canteen. So clearly he was not an entrepreneur. That was the start of my entrepreneurial journey. I then went to the US, got my master's and PhD at Carnegie Mellon, started my first company in computer systems for energy management in buildings. The interesting part of the story is that I needed $100,000 of capital to actually build the company, and no one would provide it. Now, in hindsight, that's not very surprising. I had no business experience other than the canteen. Didn't count for much in the US. I had no capital of my own to put in. I had no proven business experience. So naturally, VCs were reluctant. I had to go to 125 venture capital firms, get 124 rejections, till the last firm actually put in $100,000. And from that, I built a company that a few years later was acquired for about $10 million. And that was the start of my sort of financial rewards journey, if you can call it that. So what's the moral of that story for entrepreneurs? That you will get a lot of rejection. You have to learn. It isn't enough to just say, okay, I'm not going to give up. That's noble, that's essential, but it's not enough. You really have to learn the reasons why people are rejecting whatever it is you have, whether it's your product, your idea, your business plan. And then from that learning, if you can get better and better, then ultimately success comes. So that was a great journey. I then started a robotics company, and that was another 10-year journey. And since my position today is entirely the result of all the mistakes that I have made in the past, and having learned from them, in this particular company, the giant mistake that I made was not really understanding the market. I was taken in by the hype. I was taken in by all kinds of bogus data, which I didn't bother to validate or check. And having gotten into it, and because I now had a reputation, and this is back in the early 80s, I was actually able to raise $40 million in venture capital, which at that time was a considerable amount of money. I then realized that I was competing with 20 of the largest companies in the world, including GE and Hitachi and others. And the market was only 4% of the size it was estimated to be. And it was one tough slog. And the lesson I learned there was that there is no substitute for really gaining a deep understanding of your customer. And if I had done that first, I might still have done robotics, but I'd have done it a lot smarter, a lot more efficiently. And instead, I spent 100 hours a week for 10 years because, as a matter of honor, I was unwilling to step away from the company, having raised this capital from these very well-known investors. And if you take 100 hours a week and 10 years, and my personal outcome at the end of that journey was $600,000, and you do the simple math involved, it's about $13 or $14 an hour. So a good argument could be made that if I had gone to work at McDonald's flipping hamburgers, I might have made just as much as I made as an entrepreneur. But what changed was I came out of that experience one tough, well-informed entrepreneur who would never make those stupid mistakes again. So the third journey, which I then decided to do in Silicon Valley because I felt I had to compete with the best. And so I moved to Silicon Valley with my family. And that third company, which also took 10 years, Aspect Development, did turn out to be very successful. And over the 10 years, allowed me to create a company that was acquired for a little over $9 billion. So those were the first three companies. And then I thought, okay, do I want to do another startup or do I want to do a group of startups? So I started Symphony Technology Group, and over a 15-year period from roughly 2002 to roughly 2017, I built a total of 33 companies, which collectively have delivered about $12 billion or so in enterprise value, and there's still a substantial amount of value left in the group. At that point, I'm 70 years old. An argument could be made, you've done reasonably well, you got a fair amount of money, you can pay the bills, you can even have a foundation, you can probably give a lot of money back to society. why not just be a mentor or a board member or a philanthropist? And the other lesson I learned was when you've been an entrepreneur for a long time, it kind of changes your DNA. So if your DNA was normal before you became an entrepreneur, it's defective by the time you have been a serial entrepreneur for as many years as I have. And I concluded, and so did my wife and my family and friends, that you know what, you're never going to change. Your DNA is completely screwed up. Therefore, it is highly likely you'll be doing another group of companies, and of course they were right. So I'm currently building a group of companies called Symphony AI Group, and this is a group of companies that are intended to become leading companies that transform business through advanced AI solutions, one company for each different vertical market. I'm doing this while also running the foundation and doing a few other things. But what I find fascinating about the journey is that even at this age, even after having done 40-ish companies, I love it because I'm still learning everything new, something new every day. Now, the question might be asked, why 42? A couple of years ago, well, more than that, maybe 5 years ago, I thought, you know, I'm kind of getting dangerously close to 50. I'm probably only 15 companies away from 50. 50 is a nice round number. There's no logic. There's absolutely no rhyme or reason to it. Just that it's a nice round number that ends in a 0, and 50 is better than 40. So I just picked 50 as the number of companies I wanted to do in my lifetime. So if good health continues, as I hope it will, I only have 8 more companies to go. Look for 2 or 3 more every year for the next few years, and hopefully I'll get there. So what does all this mean for you? My journey might be very interesting, but obviously I'm not expecting everyone can replicate this because I had the privilege of being in the US. I had a lot of other privileges. And so I'd like to share 3 or 4 experiences with you in terms of the kinds of companies you have to build. The first lesson is that it all begins with the customer. It all ends with the customer. The most successful companies are the ones that have the deepest understanding of their customers. How they think, what they need, what value they will assign to your solutions, how differentiated they will think you are, what price they'll be willing to pay, the credibility signals that they'll be looking for, the people that they'll be looking for in your company. All this really starts with the customer. If you understand this, even though you'll make mistakes along the way, as I have again and again, you will learn much faster if you have this deep and intimate relationship with your customers. So I'm a great believer that your journey as an entrepreneur starts with this very close relationship with a small set of initial customers. The approach I've taken in the past is I basically challenge them. I tell them, look, I'm starting a new company. I expect you to be my mentors. I expect you to guide me, because if you don't, I'm going to haunt you anyway. I'm going to be trying to sell you anyway. Why would you want me to sell you junk instead of selling you something that is directly aligned with what your needs are and what your value is? And it's amazing how positively customers react to that kind of message and how much they're actually willing to help you. And so in every one of the companies I have a CEO, and the first thing I look for is what is the level of true business intimacy that they have with their customers, how much time do they spend with customers, and most of all, what have they learned? Because through them, of course, I can't be with every customer for every company all the time, so through them, what exactly am I learning that would be of great value? The second, I would say, most important success factor is a successful business model. So the question is, what is a successful business model? What is a business model? People talk about business models all the time, but don't always understand what it means. We have to remember that we are building companies, and you're building companies in a dynamic marketplace. In that marketplace, customer needs are changing, the nature of competition is changing, the nature of your suppliers is changing. Some of them might be reliable, some of them might be flaky. The nature of your employees is changing. Some of them might be dedicated and trustworthy, and some of them might be unreliable. Disruption is happening all the time. Someone in a garage may have come up with a new solution better than the one you have at 1/3 of the price. So the ability to integrate all this intelligence that is available out there, you have to acquire it, you have to integrate it, and you have to convert it into a framework that connects the dots between things like market size, customer value proposition, competitive differentiation, price point, potential deal opportunities, and all these factors into a framework that allows you to plan and operate your business. It has to be a framework that allows you to create a financial plan that connects the dots between market, bookings, revenue, cost, profit, headcount, and customer satisfaction, and some other metrics as well. And when these metrics are properly organized in a model that allows decision making, both for planning and for operations, you've got a business model. And then you keep refining the business model every single day, every single year, because things are changing. We're in a dynamic marketplace. So for those of you who follow this kind of methodology to business modeling, you have a much improved likelihood that you will have a successful business model. I think a third success factor for entrepreneurs is continuous innovation. Most people think of innovation as this brilliant breakthrough new idea that is the equivalent of a Google or the equivalent of a Facebook. Well, it doesn't have to be that revolutionary. So my definition of innovation is a range of improvements all the way from the evolutionary to the revolutionary. And it might apply to your product, it might apply to your service, it might apply to a process, but the end result of which is that you are constantly staying just ahead of the market and substantially ahead of the competition. And if you do that, again, you're building barriers to entry, you're creating opportunities for the success of your particular business. Fourth critical success factor obviously is talent. And talent is a word that is, I would say, used incorrectly much of the time. The key is your ability to attract the best talent. The question you have to ask is not the fact that you have a need for great talent. The question you have to ask is, why would great talent want to come work for you? And great talent will work for you only if the first few things are true. If they believe that you really understand the customer, have a great business model, are really passionate and committed to innovation, you greatly improve the odds that you'll be able to attract great talent. And of course, once you attract talent, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It makes the company better and makes your chances of success that much better. And finally, capital. All of us need capital to build our businesses. All of that capital is not going to come from venture capital in the quantity that you want, in the time that you want. So you have to learn to be very creative in raising capital. It might be as simple as family and friends to get seed capital to get started. It might be high net worth individuals who are willing to take a chance on you. It might be seed capital funds. After that, it might be Series A, Series B capital funds. But your customers can be financing you. If your agreements with your customers require them to pay you in 15 days or 30 days, instead of the traditional 90 or 180 days in India, you've picked up a lot of new working capital. There are sources of debt capital that are not exercised very often. And you really have to look to find all the possible sources of capital that are available to you. But certainly my experience is it can be done. So if you put all of these different factors together, you're a magician, you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be a great success. Good luck. Thank you.